Well, that felt good, didn't it? Fucking swords and shotguns and spells. And you know, chat was talking about this while I was away. I really think that, looking back at it, it was probably that petrify spell that did it. Like, the fact that it hit and managed to freeze it, and then we were just on it with spells and punching and guns and whatever. So, awesome. Let's see what Pillars has to say about the rest of the game. Everybody put on your dialogue pants. Maybe your monologue pants, we'll see. At your feet rests the body of Thaos, hollow, the dense wrinkles shaped by the silent shouldering of an eternal burden now smoothed across his color-drained face. Was all of that English? That's a terrible sentence. His soul remains still for the moment, defenseless, its energy expended in defeat. It lies sprawled across his body like a death shroud.
All those lifetimes spent to preserve a single vital secret. I would expect a man to reconsider his choices after the first 500 years.
That's the servant down, and the mistress still to go. A good start, worthy of being built upon.
I hope this is the end, but what's to stop him from being born again with the same ill intent? And before you suggest the option, no, I'm not eating his soul. I'll put almost anything in my mouth, but not that.
Thanks, Stephen.
He was good at serving his god, I'll give him that. He should have picked a better one.
A Hulk?
All those lives. At the end of them, he was no better than the very people he sought to guide. A pity he would ever have to face that realization again.
Let's explore Thaos' soul. With a deep breath, you plunge into Thaos' soul. And where in Brackenbury it had been a maze of narrow corridors and bird noises, now it is expansive and borderless, its walls crumbling into heaps like the ruins of Engwith as you pass through them. You travel for what seems like ages, rushing to a known destination, a memory you glimpsed once before. At last, you see it. No more than a pinprick of light at the end of a long tunnel, expanding slowly at first, then quickly as you near. You come out in the room you're standing in now, but it's new and pristine and filled with people. Thousands of them all turned toward the great Adra pillar and the machine that encases it. Thaos stands at the machine. You are one with him now. You look out at the crowd, at the faces of shriveled old men and cherub-cheeked little girls, at mothers bouncing infants to quiet them, and fathers clasping their children's restless hands and watching you with somber acceptance. A woman with tears in her eyes gives you a small nod. You turn back toward the machine, your breaths constricted beneath the weight of unwanted knowledge, preparing yourself to fall asleep reading this dialogue. Okay. You close your eyes and open them again to find the machine still in front of you, beckoning. You take your place in front of it and place your hands upon a large mechanical disc at the base of the great crystal column and speak a single word. Giant rings creak to life, building speed, setting arrays of carved draconic mouths aglow and sending tremors through the platform beneath you. The entire room shakes now. The room is shaking. With the brilliance, or the force of accelerating machine, all sound drowned out by its deep, deafening thrum. Brilliant tendrils of light arc outward from the pillar in all directions, and you look towards look over your shoulder to see them engulfing the crowd, burning them brightly like hot iron. Ah! One by one, the tendrils disappear, leaving ashen effigies with a bunch of sweet loot on them, where people once stood, many of them disintegrating into gray heaps under the stress of the tremors. You look above to the Adra pillar, and a glowing spherical mass has begun to coalesce atop the column where the arcs converge. It grows and pulses, translucent and bulbous like some immense chrysalis, suspended in slow rotation as though it were being spun from the arcs of light. Are we giving birth to a god? When the last arc disappears, the spectral mass hangs a moment, no longer rotating, so bright. You must shield your eyes with an outstretched hand. It seems to you as though it is looking at you. You bow your head in acknowledgement, and look back up to see it melt into the pillar. What, your head? Like warm candle wax, the pillar flares with a flash of light, bright as the sun itself. You're blind forever. Then fades to darkness. The machine slows down to an abrupt halt. And when the last echo of its grinding cogs has passed, the chamber is still, and you are alone. From all sides, reality begins to bleed in through memory, and you find yourself in your own skin once more, looking down on Thaos' lifeless body. You sense a listlessness to Thaos' soul, an overwhelming fatigue that hinders its immediate escape and makes it vulnerable to manipulation. You feel as though your victory is giving you some kind of hold over it, and you're able to do with it as you please. I can return it to the cycle. So you'll remember this, Thaos. Remember that no man can hide the truth forever, and all you've done was in futility. Your memory shall be your penance. I can tear his soul apart. I do not envy you, Thaos. I, of all people, realize the sway memories can hold. It's time you're granted peace. I can banish his soul to Braith Aemon. Thaos Ix Arcanon, there can be no forgiveness for your deeds, only justice. You shall escape judgment no longer. I can destroy all his memories, like what happened to that woman before. Or I can tear it apart. You cause me great suffering, Thaos. You do not deserve to exist. Fuck you. You reach out for Thaos' soul and feel its frailty and defeat, its texture like a coarse and threadbare cloth on the brink of disintegration. It's made mostly of jute. You insinuate yourself between the threads, pushing the weaving apart, unraveling the stitching until it is bereft of structure, a formless heap bound together by nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. In its midst, you dedicate your focus to a single idea, and the idea is shatter. You concentrate, and as you concentrate, you feel a force building within your soul, an outward pressure that strains into containment, threatening to rupture your spirit. When you can contain it no more, you transfer it into Thaos' soul all at once and release it there, a detonation of will that expands in all directions, driving out the remnants of his essence, scattering it into nothingness. You can feel his presence. In the stillness that follows, a single word echoes through your mind, a word you spoke when you were one with Thaos in ancient memory. You realize it is the word that activates the machine. Purple stuff! Oh, look at them souls. Well, let's go and check out the machine. Can I not loot his body? He had those cool daggers and everything. What a poo. Alright. F5. F-effing 5. Killed your soul, you suck. Alright. To the machine! Oh, everybody has something to say to me now. Well, we'll talk about this later. With your companions bearing witness, you step up to the place where Thaos once stood before his people long ago. The great machine lies in front of you, idle, ready. You've seen this machine and others like it in operation. You understand how it works. It's a device for directing souls. As a watcher, it would be a simple matter to influence that direction. Though big as the machine is, it may be the last thing you ever do. Not yet. Alright, everybody. Each of you get one more thing to say, and then I'm going to end this shit.
Thaos, he had hold of your soul from a long time back, seems like. You get what you needed from him?
Yeah, I got justice, sucker.
Not many can say that these days. Not in this country where they think the gods have abandoned them.
There are no gods, you dumb fuck.
You'll be feeling better soon then. Good. That's real good.
He seems like he's getting to be more of a redneck
Figured
as
out
it goes
what you're
on.
going to do about all that?
Yup.
Got a lot of people out there thinking they've been abandoned by their gods. There's not much that'll put the fear in you more than that. You can take my word for it.
Sergeant Hans Schultz, welcome to the Mask Squad. Got a lot of people out there, yada yada yada.
It's in my power. And I know it's not. But if it was, I'd send every last one of those souls right back where they were supposed to go in the first place. So folks could get back to believing what they used to.
Oh shucks, Watcher.
And after what you've been through, though, I'm sure you got your own ideas. Better make it good.
Wink. Thanks for saying nothing. Can I tear his soul out?
Astounding. I always knew the Leaden Key stood for something big, but I didn't quite realize what I'd gotten myself into. And now, we're in the middle of something even bigger. The decision that will affect millions. This is beyond either of us. The certainty of the gods is a mercy. Power like this is a heavy burden. Just look at how it crushed Thaos.
Motherfucker, I crushed
Perhaps he
Thaos.
was right to surrender it to Woodica.
Thaos was wrong. It's your decision, of course, and whatever you decide, I'm glad our paths crossed in Gilded Vale. Great. You gotta say Durance.
Ah, the end of the road greets us at last. You fared well, Watcher. Better than any Watcher has right to. Seems you were a field in need of a flame's cleansing. Would that my own trial had produced such an outcome. I had figured myself for the field all this time. But you were the field, and I the darkness. A lesson neither of Durance nor of Margaret. But with that trial's end, a new one begins. A god's trial. And I will stand in judgment without mercy.
Word. Mercy's for chumps.
We've come to the end of it, my friend. It has been an honor to walk this road with you, and I will regret our parting.
I bet you will. All the hard-won... Why did they not voice this? All the hard-won lessons we have survived I will carry back with me to Rawatai. I'll try to do justice by your story. It's both stranger and more exciting than anything I could have conjured up. Victory agrees with you, Dionea. You look as if a great weight has been lifted from your shoulders. I'm glad for it.
Victory looks good on you. There was a blur about your soul that lingers no more. Seems putting Thaos to rest has given you some measure of inner peace. Of course, now you need to decide what to do with these trapped souls.
Did no one notice that I tore his soul apart? That, like, I didn't just murder him, but I destroyed his ability to ever be reincarnated ever again. That is heavy. I was like, you know what? Fuck this guy. Shred. And everybody's like, yeah, you put him to rest. Good job, yay. And I'm like, no, I don't think it works that way. But I speak out of turn. Oh, this is your decision, my watcher friend. You should trust your own instincts. I'm honored to have been a part of your journey, regardless of what happens next, bro. Alright, I wonder, can I eat all these souls? Can I become like a god? Speak the command to activate the machine. There's a shrieking of stone, grinding against stone as old cogs loosen and begin to turn. You have only moments before the souls will be sent into the Adra vein. This will be your only chance at redirecting them. Alright, send them back into the cycle, return them to the bodies they were intended for, entropically disintegrate them, ending their existence, distribute the essence to existing souls in Deerwood, or disperse them to an unknown location. You close your eyes and expand your perception outward. Taking in the immense totality of the tens of thousands of souls orbiting the chamber, your grasp on the souls is tenuous. You find yourself fighting to keep them all within your influence, and you can feel them slipping away as the machine gains speed. A brief moment comes when you feel as though you hold all of them at once, and their force is so great it feels as though they will tear you apart. In that moment, you dedicate your entire being to bending their orbit, channeling their flow in a new direction.
At your command, the ancient device became your instrument, spinning to life with deafening resonance and gathering up the swirling essence like thread on a great spindle. There, in the pale, pulsing glow of the machine that set you on this path long ago, you summoned all your strength, focusing on your objective and blocking out all else. With a single concussive blast that rocked the chamber and sent you tumbling to the ground, you freed the souls from their stasis. Exhausted, your consciousness slipping away, your last sight was of the machine, dark and dormant. Then your eyes closed, and sleep welcomed you at long last. After coming to and searching for some time, you discovered the route Thaos used to enter Sun and Shadow, and embarked on a long and arduous ascent back to the surface. You emerged in Ter Evron after days of tunneling through the rubble Thaos had left behind. And when you stepped into the daylight, you were faced with a different Deerwood than the one you had left. At your direction, the thousands of souls gathered at the machine in Sun and Shadow were disintegrated, their essence scattered to the winds like a lifting fog, never again to find its way into the body of a living being. Though none in Deerwood would ever know for certain what had become of the missing souls, many followers of the Beast of Winter were given visions of a mass exodus to a land of eternal peace, and solemn celebrations were held the following day among his faithful. The last hollow birth in Deerwood was already in the past, and a new peace of mind had come, not just to the lost souls of the Hollowborn, but to all the people of Deerwood. Helia, who had expected the souls to be returned to the Hollowborn, was infuriated by your duplicity. The goddess of motherhood demanded new births in compensation, and made a bargain with Bereth to trade death for new life. The skies of Deerwood darkened, blotted with swarms of birds and other winged creatures, called together to claim what the Sky Mother believed to be hers by right. For months, the people of Deerwood were forced to stay under shelter from
This is kind of great.
vicious, unexplained
Oh no,
attacks
the
from
birds!
sky. The incidents left entire villages decimated.
Decimated?
The
1/10 of their
Defiance Bay
people?
with
Oh no!
corpses covered in 1,000 puncture wounds. Lord Radric's zeal had brought him back to life once, but it would not do so again.
Damn it, Hyleia.
Radric's destruction at your hands spelled the end of his suffocating rule over Gilded Vale and the surrounding area. In his absence, the village prospered, becoming a popular destination for new settlers anxious to leave Defiance Bay after the riots. Without a nearby ruler, it also grew more wild, with many settlers moving on as soon as they'd arrived, turned off by lawlessness that was excessive even by Deerwooden standards. Nevertheless, despite the challenges of living there, Gilded Vale had survived, and would continue to survive for the foreseeable future. Following the assassinations of Duke Avar Wolfgren and Lady Webb, Defiance Bay was thrown into political upheaval.
You can tell there's upheaval
In
because the
ensuing
building's all
weeks,
beat up.
The streets had become the domain of looters and blackguards. Few dared to
Fire,
step
you
outside
blackguards!
doors alone or unarmed. But once the dozens had regrouped in the wake of the riots, they quickly put an end to the criminal activity, patrolling the streets in droves and administering their brand of law on any perceived offenders. They also took the opportunity to depose the weakened Knights of the Crucible from their position of authority, branding them traitors to the people for their actions.
The weekend Knights of the Crucible.
Whatever knights weren't stoned to death,
Monday to Friday they have their own
were
jobs.
forced into exile. The external contingent of knights stationed at Fleetbreaker Castle would remain there, their high justice plotting the city's recapture. The dozens would soon find themselves overwhelmed by the problems of a leaderless metropolis, and in the days and months ahead, Defiance Bay remained on the brink of collapse.
But what happened in New Reno?
Though the machine atop Ter Noaneth had been disabled, it had not seen its last use. Heritage Hill was rebuilt, and no sooner had the first families moved in to resettle the district than members of the Leaden Key, acting under standing orders from their Grand Master, climbed the tower and reactivated the machine. The initiates slew a handful of the new settlers under cover of night, and watched as history repeated itself, the victims reanimating and devouring the survivors.
Gross.
After this second incident, the district would remain abandoned. The Duke's assassination at the apparent hands of an Animancer had caused catastrophic rioting in the streets of Defiance Bay, and few Animancers survived the first day. Many Deerwoodens took the end of Widewind's legacy as a sign, both that the gods did not approve of Animancy, and that the purging of Animancers in Defiance Bay had been enough to satisfy them. In time, their rage would subside, and a number of surviving Animancers remained in and around Defiance Bay, often taking to the wilds to practice their science without repercussions.
Science Without
The
Repercussions.
fortress
It's
of
my
Cadnua
album, my first
emerged
album.
as a bastion of security in the midst of an untamed land, becoming the envy of every Thane and Earl in Deerwood.
That's right.
Legend grew over time of its
My
impregnability.
castle's the best.
Stories of formidable invaders easily scattered by the keep's defenses became popular around the hearths of Deerwoodenians. Palagina had gone against the Duke's Bell's orders by inventing a new trade arrangement with the Anamenfath to accommodate the recovering Deerwooden market. With the Deerwood's people still weakened by Widewind's legacy, the Valian republics easily pushed their would-be competitors out of the market. For her outrageous insubordination and audacity, Palagina was banished from the republics. She traveled north in the Eastern Reach, avoiding Valian ports and entering the ranks of the kind wayfarers. Despite her bravery and dedication to those in her care, her strange appearance made her feel like an outsider wherever she went. Adair chose not to return home. Still conflicted as to his role in the Saints' War and unsure of his place in the Deerwood, he took a ship to Adir and reunited with his parents. There, he resumed the
Aw,
quiet
shucks.
lifestyle he had grown accustomed to in his years as a farmhand in Gilded Vale. When the dust settled in sun and shadow, Aloth looked upon the remains of Thaos Ix Arcanon, his former master. He saw where the Grandmaster had gone wrong, and he knew what he would do better. The secret of the gods would be preserved, and with it, the sanity and well-being of all Kith. He donned the remains of Thaos' ceremonial garb, and prepared himself for the
He
long
put a pig upon his head and did go forth.
With both their aims fulfilled, Kana Rua bid the Watcher farewell, and sailed back to his beloved Rawatai. There, he reported on his findings to the Lore College. Kana spoke of the Engwithan people, describing both their vile experiments and their inspiring accomplishments. He spoke too of the destruction of the tablet by the Leaden Key, and the group's efforts to erase the Engwithan legacy from the world. Both inspiration and cautionary tales, he said, could be found in the world beyond Rawatai's borders. Kana urged his people to continue to pursue knowledge abroad, so that the lessons found there might benefit Tekoa. Kana's inability to prove his theory of Engwithan influence diminished his academic standing, but his passion drew much interest from those less concerned with degrees. Kana swiftly became an influential figure in the move toward a more collaborative approach to expansion on the northern continent. In his personal life, he came to enjoy the reputation of an affable eccentric, willing to share grand and impossible secrets, along with a drink and a song. With Thaos defeated and the souls released from sun and shadow, healthy children were born once again in the Deerwood. The grieving mother sought a place where she might do penance for the birthing bell. She returned to Deerford, where, to the astonishment of the villagers, she delivered the first healthy child in over a decade. She remained there, and with each new birth, she saw a measure of hope restored to the Deerwood, and a measure of grace for her own troubled past.
Then she hung herself from a wet rope.
Durrance used Mogren's strength only until Thaos had been cast from the world, and then swore off her influence entirely. Regret came to weigh heavily on his mind, and a man who had never previously lacked for words or opinions came to embrace silence and contemplation.
Look at his one crazy
He
eye.
continued to wander, penniless and destitute, searching now not for the reason for his goddess's silence, but for a mechanism for revenge. The charred robes he continued to wear as a reminder that he had been burned by his goddess, and not just by the flames of the Godhammer.
It's appropriate.
Sagani experienced the 4 months of her journey back to Masuk in vivid colors. She strove to memorize every moment of her final trip through the Deerwood, Air Glonfoth, the Valian Republics, and beyond, preparing to tell her village of what she had seen on her long journey. All of Masuk shared in her triumph, and she felt her pride and elation magnified by the joy of her village. Never again did she doubt the value of her sacrifices. After decades as a long hunter, Sagani finally became one of Masuk's most respected elders. She guided her community with wise
Yay,
counsel.
good ending for
And a
Sagani.
generation after she finally passed, another huntress journeyed into the world to find her soul.
Good work.
For you, the death of Thaos brought an end to your waking visions, and a silence to the whispers of the past. In their absence, you were able to sleep. The questions of a distant lifetime ceased to trouble your soul.
Word.
All that remained was what to make of the answer. But at the moment, there was little to be done, and the matter would have to wait. A long journey loomed ahead.
Yes. Well, and that's that, huh? Well, thanks for sticking it out with me, everybody. It's been an exciting journey through Pillars of Eternity. I feel like there's both a lot to say and not much to say. Like, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Like, this game feels, to me, like, I mean, I talked about it all the way through, right? It's Baldur's Gate, but with new art and new animations and a new world, and I think that part is the thing that's the most engaging, right? Is that the setting of this game emerged in a way that, for me, became more and more engaging as I played through it. I was sort of bored of it at the beginning. I didn't really care. I didn't feel engaged, and there's lots of stuff in this game that I didn't engage with. Lots of NPC stuff that I didn't do. Mechanically, I wasn't super engaged with the game. Like, I got kind of an idea at the end, but if you've been watching, I pretty much just like mashed my way through most of the fights. And I think that in its quest to be a modern Baldur's Gate, it did a pretty good job, to be perfectly honest. Like, it took a lot of the things that were great about Baldur's Gate and made them good. I wonder what this game would have been like published under a new... like, published by a publisher. Rather than going through Kickstarter, right? Like, there were places where it felt very Kickstarter-y, and there's an aesthetic or a feel to games that are published on Kickstarter that I think is just a method of the way that people try to get funding, in that all the bullshit with the NPCs that didn't matter, and all of the, like, fourth wall breaking gravestones and stuff, which, caused them problems from a PR perspective in some cases. I feel like that stuff comes from this idea that the way that they kickstarted it, right? And that's just a thing that's going to happen for a while until people get out of that early phase of like crowdfunding and the way that stuff works. Oh, that's cute. Development tabletop character slain. So while they were making this, they were playing Ars Magica and 3.5. That doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me at all. So I think that when you analyze a game like this, you have to analyze it in sort of three ways. Or you analyze it based on the mechanisms of the game and are they accomplishing the goals. And I think that's it's a highly polished version of how Baldur's Gate was developed. This is the game that the people at Black Isle would have made had they made the game now. You can examine it narratively. Did it tell the story that it set out to tell? And that's a hard way to know, because in a lot of ways, we can't see into the mind of a game developer. The game developer's only method to communicate is the game itself. So were the developers trying to say something about our world, about philosophy, about religion by making this game? Oh, Ja Bunny, welcome to Math Squad. You're joining us at an odd time. Or were they just doing something that seemed like a fun fantasy story? Are we supposed to learn something from this, or were they just like, well, it's a fantasy world, so we can make some stuff happen? And the third way that you can really judge a game like this is how does it fit into the genealogy and the general sort of cartography of the games that are like it? Is it does it have a successful place within that stuff? And to that end, I think it's very successful, right? I think that fans of the genre will love this game. I think that people who are brand new to the genre will find it engaging in a way that feels modern in a lot of ways. I don't feel like it's just I don't know, I don't feel like it's just a way to say, like, oh, we really love Baldur's Gate, so we're going to make Baldur's Gate 3. But I do think that it didn't take a lot of risks in that regard. Its place, it felt very much like, what did Baldur's Gate do, and how do we do that, but different? The setting I found really engaging in that I think that the stuff about the gods was interesting. I loved that they were like, actually, the gods are fake at the end, but does it matter? And you get to make that decision. I liked the whole thing with Magran and Durance. I'm sure that I would have loved some of the other characters as well if I had had the time to investigate them. I liked that they did the Mega Dungeon thing. That was cool. I don't know, I always want games to be smarter than they are. I always want games to be more socially risky. I wish that there had been more I don't know. I wish that there had been more to the game than just like, it's an adventure with some very thin philosophical or religious stuff on top. I mean, honestly, like, if you watch me GM, the way that I GM and the kinds of stuff that I cover in my games are the stuff that I really appreciate in the games that I play. I really like seeing social issues brought up, and that's why, I mean, fantasy is hindered by the fact that it doesn't focus on social content as much. But I feel like I got my experience's worth from the game. You know, I know that a lot of people had questions, and actually I'm happy to take questions if people have them about how I feel about the game or anything about my experience with it. But I really like, this is the first role-playing game, modern role-playing game, I guess, because we did Fallout 2, that I played all the way through, and did so on stream with an audience. And I mean, you'll notice, like, while you're watching me play, I'm not the kind of person that feels like I need to master every system, and I like having help, and, like, we spent all that time just, like, dicking around trying to find Raedric in that dungeon, and ultimately, for me, it just came down to, like, chat, help me solve this problem. So it's fun. Like, I really like parallel play. I like playing video games alone in people's company, and so it's really fun to be able to do that with all of my subs and my followers as we played through the game. It made me think about what I was experiencing in maybe a different way. I think that like, there's a question from Random Civilian Zero. So the question is, do you think that using a non-D&D system made the game any better or worse? I don't think it matters. Initially, I found it a little awkward because I was like, what, like, I'm treating, we talked about this in the first episode, I treat empty space as if it needed to be filled with D&D, which I think a lot of people do if they have a lot of experience with D&D. So, you know, I mean, 6 of one, half dozen the other. What I am really interested in, and I know I'm probably going to be disappointed in because I'm a cynic and that's just how I feel, is what the tabletop game that comes out that's based on this is like. Dollars to donuts, it's garbage because most things that get created are bad, but I really hope, I really hope, and, like, if anyone knows anyone that works at Obsidian, please, like, put them in touch with the general role-playing community if you can. Like, there's so many good designers out there, and if these guys, these folks at Obsidian, they're only playing 3.5 and they're playing Ars Magica, God, I don't even know what kind of RPG is going to come out of that. No, they're talented systems designers, right? They made a game that should be able to be translated into a tabletop game, but we'll see, right? Like, I have this terror that it's just going to be another Dragon Age tabletop RPG, which I personally didn't find very engaging. But we can hope, right? And that every new game that comes out, there's a chance that it's going to be amazing, right? It's nothing is bad or good until it's finished. So I got hope for that. You know, we'll see if it turns out. So I feel like, so here's a good question. So Force Real 4 says, during character creation, you mentioned that you felt the amount of contextless info that's thrown at the player is kind of overwhelming. Now that I've beaten the game, do I feel differently about all the info you received during the first hour? Shrug. I feel like the conveyance of the setting was very slow at the beginning, in that it's a tricky balance, right? Like, and think about this from, like, a tabletop RPG perspective, because that's all I ever do. If you approach the game from a perspective of trying to show off your game world all at once, it can be overwhelming and boring. It can be like, all right, I'm going to tell you everything about all the gods. I have 46 pages of stuff, and you end up with this, like, massive info dump that no one pays attention to. All anyone really cares about in character creation is, like, what's in your character? What do you have to... I wonder if that James Ward is James M. Ward, who created Metamorphosis Alpha. Probably not, but it might be. Anyway, I feel like imparting setting is maybe one of the trickiest things that anyone can do, whether they're making a game or whether they're making a tabletop campaign. It's very hard to impart setting. So I don't know. I think they did their best. It could have been a little less divulgent in the sense of, like, dumping things on you. But by the end, I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on the stuff I gave a shit about. I don't care about a bunch of stuff in the setting, so I ignored it, right? I ignored it in play. I didn't follow it up. So, let's see. Do I think the game had proper diversity in races, cultures, etc.? It's a good question, Red Virus. I don't get to say whether a game is properly diverse. I'm always going to want more diversity. They never specifically addressed a bunch of stuff that I find really important to address in games, but it was nice that the characters weren't all white. You know, having black characters in the game was good. That's nice. I mean, the game didn't address, just like so many classic like fantasy games, it didn't address sexuality except in the whorehouse. That's like pretty much the only way that I saw it. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm always going to want more diversity. It's nice that there was any, but we can do better, right? Mass Effect, obviously, good example. The Dragon Age series. I think those are the kinds of examples we want to look at for including that kind of content in games. But that's a thing that'll spread, right? People will pick that up the more that people want it in games. Dorfin asks, what do you think about the story in general? Do you find it fitted the world your character lived in, or do you believe they could have done more with the souls? I like it. I like that the idea of souls was crucial to the whole game. It wasn't crucial in just one specific way, but they explored a bunch of different aspects of what is a soul, how does it work, you interact with it directly. I would love to have seen it been mechanized, because you know me, like I don't think that that if something exists in a game purely in the setting and there's no mechanics for it, I don't think it exists truly in the sense that it should. So for me, like, I would have loved if character creation had been like, let's talk about your past lives, you know, like, what was your past life like? What was the life before that like? You know, that's stuff that I think is fascinating, and that would have tied it into the game a little more, but ultimately I feel like they did a pretty good job making the game feel thematically about a specific thing. So, I mean, good work on that end. Sir Attenborough asks, do you think it's tough for developers to really dive into controversial subjects because games are so public? The game hints at religious issues but never dives into it. Do you know of any games that take this stuff head on? I mean, not a lot of popular games take like a very strong social or philosophical stance. You know, you see that a lot more in indie games and smaller press stuff. But I do think that what's really important is that developers tackle controversial issues because it's so public, right? Like, and again, we talked about this in one of the episodes early on, where it's hard to make a game that isn't also a product, because we develop content, we make games in a capitalist environment, and we can't escape that. Which isn't to say that we need to, right? Like, games don't necessarily, they're not better if you give them away for free, but I really think that that it's relevant to address the fact that you're making a game to sell, and if you're worried about the game not selling because there's something controversial in it, you do, as a designer, have to make that choice, right? You're making a game to be played, and is it going to make people play your game less? Are you going to get less money? And that's a hard call to make, especially when, I mean, you're looking at it, you're directly supposed to be making a thing for these people. These are the people that we're looking at right here. These are the ones that this game is for. The game's not for me. I didn't back this game. So Kickstarter makes the whole other thing like weird in that, like, I backed a game that's like a I can't remember the name of it because I have a terrible memory, but it's like a queer cyberpunk JRPG, and I bought in specifically because I knew these would be the topics, and when it comes out, I'm going to definitely stream it, we're going to talk about it, but that game is being made for me, and I backed it knowing what it was. So I think that Kickstarter and the sense of entitlement to content and what people make absolutely changes the way that you make games. So Halfwing asks, would you like to see the soul aspect of past lives, that soul and common traits exist in the tabletop RPG version? Yes. Totally. Similar to how Pendragon goes in, all in on taking up your family quest thing, but on a soul scale. Yeah, if the tabletop version of the game doesn't address that, their issue set ahead of them is the same issue that we had when we made Dungeon World, and the same issue that Vincent Baker had when he made Apocalypse World, and the same issue that Mike Mearls had when he put it forth Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. It's all about having an idea and trying to put that idea into a game that other people can explore those topics by way of the game. And that's so hard. That is so fucking hard. I'm really excited to play The Witcher 3 because I think that CD Projekt Red is a company that does that so well. They should be so proud of themselves for making cross-media that feels so much like what they set out to make it feel like. I feel like it's just... I don't know, it's a hard talent to have an idea and to make a game out of that idea. And I would love to see a different team, or a team that's backed up by some of these people, build a tabletop RPG that can do different stuff. And hopefully that different stuff, like I was saying, Halfwing, is more about souls and about the lineage that a character might have. It'd be super cool if you did like Pendragon did, where you're not playing your character's son, you're playing the same character through multiple incarnations, or at least you've backed yourself up that way. And I think that it's really interesting to see tabletop developers take risks. So fingers crossed. Fingers crossed that that's a thing that they choose to do. Businessman Salamander, which is an adorable mental image. Businessman Salamander asks, how do you think the game would have been better or worse off if it had been created under a larger publishing house as opposed to being kickstarted? Oh boy. Okay, well let's talk about if a publisher had released this game. It would be way better marketed, right? We would have seen probably TV commercials for it. It would have been pretty different. They might not have gotten away with making it a straight up Baldur's Gate clone. I feel like, yeah, so better marketing. Everything, there would have been lots more cinematics. They would have probably hired a team to pre-render some cinematics. We would have had way fuller dialogue. I don't know that the game would have had more content necessarily. It would have just been fancier stuff. And we would definitely have been able to buy like a season's pass for more stuff, more levels for the dungeon, more NPCs, that kind of stuff. And you know what? That's fine. That's totally fine. But there would have been maybe less creative control. And it's hard to see in a game that's pretty straightforward like this one. Like, they didn't take any big creative risks, honestly. So, I don't know. It's hard to say. I guess we'll never know. There's an alternate universe in which Pillars of Eternity was made by, like, an EA subdivision, but this universe isn't that one. And in the universe that we're in, we got the playthrough that we got to play. I love the idea that people will be able to watch this playthrough and they'll be able to see a different way that the game progressed. I'm personally really curious about it myself. I love that about Fallout. I loved it about this game. I really liked it about the Telltale games, how the choices you made affected the ending you got, even if in this game it was just a series of voiceovers with some, you know, some splash screens. But all told, I feel pretty good about my experience with Pillars of Eternity. You know, people have asked me throughout the playthrough, did you like it? And I mean, if I wasn't enjoying it, I would have said, this game blows and I'm out. I don't want to spend 40 odd hours playing it. But you know what? I'm glad that I did. I'm glad that I played through it. It was every bit what I had hoped. And yeah. So thank you so much if you've been watching from the beginning. This is it. This is the end. This has been our playthrough of Pillars of Eternity here at twitch.tv/AdamKoebel or on YouTube. And I am happy to have had you here. So thanks for sticking around.